my managing director, Blair Lipsitz, and Joe Schaefer from Lipsitz Matthias. Welcome back, Joe, and we're happy to have you back, and actually looking forward to you leading today's discussion.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, guys. I watched the film on my first one. W've got a lot to work on today, but I think it's great that I will be prompting questions because I give you guys a lot of credit for listening to me for as long as you did. I think there were a few tangents that went far too long, so hopefully you guys can keep me in check by asking me to do the questions. I know that probably wasn't a coincidence when Blair suggested that, but
I told him that's the point, is for him to talk. It's okay.
Exactly.
I don't know. There's talking, and then there was that. So for our listeners, thanks for bearing with me. If you made it through that episode, hopefully you'll have to hear a lot less from me today, and we'll enjoy our time.
We don't want a lot less. We want more, Coach.
So the top. This is going to be odd for the listeners, but the guest is coming in with the topic. Although it was Coach Blair who gave it to me. We are talking high-level athletes, high-level performers. If we can, go beyond the sports realm, and certain challenges that come with whether it's being a high-level athlete or coaching a high-level athlete. And then the host of issues, challenges, and also, excitement that comes around being a part of that process no matter where you are. So, to kick it off, I think it's important, and maybe this is the lawyer in me, but we got to define what a high-level athlete or a high-level performer is. And so Coach Rich, Coach Blair, characteristics, and then I think it's a two-part question. How would you define that person? And then what sets that high-level performer apart from the pack, whether it's their teammates or their competitors?
Right. I would have answered this differently before I coached. So this is a very interesting question for me because as an athlete, I would have said, the best athlete, the best whatever it is. As a coach, the most consistent is what I would say to define it. Because and I think it is really important to make it about mental performance and not to make it about athletes solely. So I think of a performer as a Broadway star, a ballet dancer. They're consistent. You go watch them, and the whole time I'm in awe of the perfection, right? And they get up there on the stage every night, and they hit the same notes, and they're perfect. And I used to tell my team all the time, you're an attacker. Are you hitting 1,000? You might once in your career, right? And I'm sure there are things that the Broadway performers are like, oh, I missed that note or I missed that note. I'm sure that happens. But we as the audience don't see that. Athletics, you see it and right? You can look at it on a stat sheet. And so to me, consistency is like the main thing. I don't know.
No, that's interesting, Coach. Well, I'll go into this in a second because, we have sitting before us Blair Lipsitz, and she is the definition of elite performer.
Oh boy.
Right.
I was part of a lot of elite teams. That's yeah.
Well, see,
sure.
Now there you go. Giving credit to the collective. Right.
Right.
Big Ten Player of the Year, 4-time national champion, onto a professional career. And here you sit humbly saying, I was part of a great collection of people, which is absolutely, we always will credit the unit, right, the collective,
right,
because it happens with team. But Joe, the question of elite performer, and I'm happy that you start with, what is the definition, and I like consistency for your response.
Wouldn't you take a player who's consistent over a player who, maybe is like the best person on the court sometimes, but sometimes is the worst, like that positive, negative? Yeah, that's an attribute which we'll embrace every day of the week. I'll tell you this little story about Coach. You want to talk about high performers? Yes. He's one of the highest. He used to take notes in his notebook, and he would not only write down the good things and the bad things that people. He did both. So it was like Blair, positive, kill. Blair, negative, off blocker, defense, no defense. So even the stuff that wasn't on the stat sheet that you didn't see, he always knew how many points you were giving and you were taking from the team. Wow. So you might have 25 kills, but you may have given the other team 30 points. Yeah. With other errors that would never be on a stat sheet. And everyone would say, why'd you take her out of the game? Right? She's costing me 30 points. She gave them 30 points. But you don't see it. So it's like he kind of got that big full picture.
Yeah. There again is an elite performer. Mm-hmm. You know, when I think of my own experience as an elite performer, I think of a young gentleman at 5:30, 5:45 every morning. Speaking of consistently, lights on, only one in the gym. Hour and a half before classes start.
Like an intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, he was there. Sometimes, day before big games, still there in his morning regimen. Right. So that part of consistency. I think that when we think about elite athlete, we think about, as you've already said, Coach, the superior skill level. There's a skill set, right, in every sport. I know higher, faster, stronger, the Olympic credo. We get that. Certain levels of physical strength, speed, those kinds of things certainly can be labeled as elite.
Right, but I know a lot of elite athletes that weren't Olympians, not because they weren't the strongest, fastest, all of those things, right?
Right.
But because I think the mental side or the team side, there were all these other different reasons why.
Yeah, and I coming from a basketball background,
yeah,
and we think of these showcases or all-star games or recruiting combines that, we're looking to identify. Let's just talk recruiting for a second. When we recruit, what are we looking for?
Yeah.
And people have asked me that, and first thing that comes to my mind is blood on the knees, right? Who's really working hard? Who's really making the extra effort? Who really is fighting? And I always also think about 3TG is a little acronym here, right? True to the game. An elite athlete is not one who is, thinks they're overly important or the only one on the court, basketball speaking. An elite athlete is someone who thinks about the team just like you did in your first response today, Coach. So it is difficult to define what we mean by elite athlete. I mean, we can look at, StatDat, looking on that recent commercial, right?
Yeah.
We can look at the stats. We can look at the record, 3-time All-Star, starter in the all 4 years, statistics, leading categories. Okay, that's part of the definition.
Yeah.
But I think it is. It's the total character in addition to the elite skill set and this constant improvement, this consistency that you're talking about is part of the definition. And to end this story quick, I don't have one definition.
Because I don't think there is.
Yeah.
I had to start us off with a trick question, and I think you guys knocked it out of the park. But I mean, when I was taking my notes on it, I have, and when you guys were speaking, I just have written skill set plus.
Yeah.
Right. I think the skill set is the base. If you're at a high level, you can do the basic physical whatever it is in your sport. You can hit that ball. You can kill from whatever spot. You can hit every kill. I can hit every shot on the court. Coach, however many tools you need to be a great basketball player or baseball player. You can do all of it. And it's that little extra. What is that intangible that sets you apart? And I think it's, I love this is the Western New York Coaches podcast. And I think from a coach's perspective, defining what a high level or elite performer is doesn't necessarily come down to what you can do athletically.
No,
it sounds like it's so much more of, what's your drive? What's your commitment? What's your fight? And then I think my last question, and I don't mean to throw us down a rabbit hole, but is leadership a part of being an elite athlete? And leadership, again, is a super, it's very broad, because I think I think leadership can be, but I don't think it necessarily has to be.
Yeah.
But that's that's a skew. I don't want to corrupt your guys' perspectives on this. Where do you come down on leadership in that question? And
That's
I don't think there's an answer to spoil it.
I think too often people try to push certain elite athletes into the role of leader, and that might not be where they should be. And that's okay, right? You know, people are elite for all sorts of different reasons, like we've said, but it's not always the personality that they have on the court with their team. And I know individual sports is a little bit different. And you can speak to that, which is great, because I think it is a little different. But in a team setting, I think almost always, even when I wasn't ready to lead, I would be like a freshman or a sophomore and on a team that's much older and say, oh, you're a leader. I'd be like, what? You know, they've got 2 or 3 years on me. Like, they've got a lot more knowledge about the game. They've got a lot more this and that. And it, you know, being forced into it maybe too early made me a different kind of leader. And it wasn't until I really started coaching that I recognized the kind of leader I would want to be. So that's just a different perspective on it, I guess. But I think some people are natural leaders. And I think somebody who's maybe not getting a ton of playing time but works so hard in the gym every day, for you to give somebody like that a leadership position, from a coaching perspective, it shows your team that, you know, that is what you're looking for from everyone, and that person is equally as important as somebody who's a starter for 4 years, because that person is probably carrying your program through. Yeah, with their grit, right?
Totally agree that leadership comes from so many places.
Yeah.
And sometimes all the way at the end of the bench.
100%.
Yeah. And there are types of leaders, right?
Yeah, different types.
Vocal leaders lead by example.
I know. I heard all the time from, and I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
I hear all the time from athletes, I lead by example. I get that all the time. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's great. But how else can we lead? Right. You know, because to say that I lead by example, I think it's so vague when athletes say it. It's like, oh, I just do everything I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. How can you be a better teammate?
How can we be a better teammate? Yeah. How can we be a better? Yeah, you know, there are all different ways of leading a team. But that is one that when I hear it all the time, oh, I think I lead by example. Yeah. And it's like, but I think it's vague. Just, one of those vague things.
It is. And tying leadership to elite performer, if we can, you know, call it that, I believe it's in there. I believe it is embedded.
Right.
When we identify someone as an elite performer, I could very easily make an assumption that there are some leadership attributes in that, you know, in that person, in that assessment, because again, if we're going to put a label on one of our players as a coach, we have to be careful, right? Robin Jones et al. Speaks of that we're all equal, right? And of course the coach is the first among equals. So when we have to, I think, wave that caution flag of identifying someone as elite. Mm-hmm. I mean, the NFL Pro Bowl's coming up, and how many Buffalo Bills, Western New York, right? Well, a couple did get elected, voted in, and some who didn't. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Well, individual recognition is part of sport. Statistics, again, are part of sport. There's a clear-cut first team, all Western New York, for example. They're the best 5. What does that mean? I mean, I think if we look closely and we look at the best 5 in any sport of Western New York, we could probably pick another 5.
Right. That would be very, very successful, right?
Right.
Just in a different way.
Right. And who could?
Because their 5 the chemistry between them would be different than the chemistry between the other 5.
Well, and that's an interesting.
That's a different,
but that's an interesting comment. But it's true, because when we pick the best 5, are we picking the best 5 because of chemistry, or are we picking the best 5 individuals? There's a lot of discussion about that for another day. But
do you choose captains for your teams, or do you allow your teams to vote?
I've done both.
Okay, I have too.
Yeah, and I like the idea of having every individual participate. Mm-hmm. Who nominates, put a vote in. Yeah, I've gone as far as taking all 3 top 3 and making them tri-captains.
Okay. I thought you were going to say make them try out. That's what I thought you were saying.
Captain tryouts.
Captain tryout.
Yeah.
I think we're also missing a key piece here in respect for leadership. You know, you can all day tell people this person's a good leader, but if the team doesn't respect them, that's it. It's the same with coaches. Yeah. You know, if you're coaching and your team doesn't respect you, probably not a leader, right? You're probably not their leader anyway. They might have a captain that they're following more than the coach. But I think that respect piece, and it has to be earned, as we all know. It can't be named. And so I think that's why when you ask this question about leadership and you know, within the high level athlete or the elite athlete, for me, that's the first thing that I thought of, because, you know, just because they're presumably one of the best players on the team doesn't mean they're respected fully, you know?
Yeah.
And so maybe that's the piece that I'm missing. I don't know.
It's the foundation. I agree with you.
Yeah.
You know, respect is what we all know.
Right.
That we do have to earn it, and it must be a part of that relationship.
Yeah.
In order to be most successful or to maximize potential, if you will.
Yeah. And I think from a coaching perspective, I didn't realize, I mean, you've really got to earn it every day. You've got to show up every single day. And if you take a day off where you're kind of there, kind of not there, the team feels that. And they'll be like, what's going on with her? You know, what's going on with her today? Did I do something? Did you say something? Did somebody say something? Are we going to run today? You know, and like it just starts to go. And it's like you really have to show up consistently, again, the same day as a leader, or I think it's harmful for the team. Harmful might be a harsh word, but.
Yeah, it presents more of a challenge.
Yeah,
sometimes.
for sure.
Yeah, this you know, when we discuss and where are you going next, Joe? Because this you have me thinking about this elite performer, and yes, we want to embrace the fact that we have one of our elite performers on our roster, and we want as many as we can. But you know, where's his or her ego?
Yeah.
You know, how do we handle them? We can say, yes, we have individual meetings every week to 10 days with every player on the team, for example, depending on a coach's approach. And so what do we talk to the elite performer about? Today's environment, elite performers have many outside people in their ear.
That's true. That's a piece of it we haven't talked about too.
You guys have taken me to my second question, and I think we've hit it.
I love that we're only on our second question.
No, I mean, we're asking follow-ups here too, but I mean, the basic question was what challenges do these elite or high-level performers pose, and we've already hit on a few, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the respect issue, just because you can, you know, you've got the best shot, or you can, you know, you have the most kills on the team, doesn't necessarily mean that your teammates respect you, and they frankly may resent you.
Right. Yeah.
Could you be coach's favorite, right? And is coach giving you preferential treatment? I know that
you don't want to be a favorite
or
within your team.
Yeah, or even if you don't care for it, how does it affect your team dynamics? And do you care about that? Because again, but I mean, and I know we've spoken about that, but if you guys want to stay on the point, continue to brainstorm, or I can move on.
Well, Frank Layden, you know, the great NBA coach and general manager, had Adrian Dantley, leading scorer in the NBA. And benched him because no one's bigger than the team, right? Challenged him, and of course, in the public eye, it was okay. Well,
would you see that today? Would you see that happen?
If it was on my team?
Well, I agree with you, but in the NBA and the NFL, is that going to happen? You come on, we have too many examples, right? Yeah.
That it's not
right. That it's not or that it is possible, I guess.
Yeah, well, and again, you know, that opens up the whole pro level dollars contracts.
The dollars, right.
Then the collegiate level, of course, and the need for a coach to win, to keep their job, all kinds of factors. But
Right.
If we lose our principles, or if we compromise our principles, then we're back to what you said about respect, Coach,
yeah.
and credibility in that locker room.
Right, you lose
I mean,
the locker room.
if elite
Sad.
player number 1 walks in 2 minutes late to practice and doesn't get the same consequence as number 14 on the bench, we have an issue.
Yeah.
We're starting to crack. We're breaking up, right?
Right.
The foundation of
Yep.
team. So I think that there are challenges, but I think it starts with the coach being very clear with their expectation. I mean, we don't want a 15 line item, list of expectations. We want 3 or 4.
Right.
And we've talked about this in other conversations, right? Values, core values
Yep.
of the team that
makes everything easier.
Yeah, and that the members of the team own and are part of creating.
Yep.
And Coach, right back to consistency.
Yeah.
Well, if these are our core values, then everyone is responsible.
I think pressure is another piece for the high-level athlete. In particular, today it feels much heavier, just in working with athletes and coaching than maybe it was even when I played 10, 15 years ago. It's like there's a pressure there to be the best, but then to stay the best and to be the best one.
Talk
right?
about that, Coach. Talk about that in your own experience, please.
Yeah, I mean, so I was lucky because I'm 6'5", right? So I had a set of skills, like you say, a skill set based on my height that put me maybe in front of some other players in different positions. So I got to play at a high level. When I was in high school, I got to play up and play with older athletes, which was great, I think, for me physically. Maybe not like socially, but physically I think it was great. And then, I go to college and I am by far the worst one in the gym because you're walking into this gym, and I played my freshman year. I came in with someone who became the National Player of the Year, future Olympians. I mean, these people that I came in with were like, I was so excited just, to be included in that group. And so you walk in and you're like, oh, and now I'm the worst player in the gym.
Wow.
Where do we go from here? So I redshirted my first year and I'm so grateful for that because I had a year to just mature. I mean, not only physically, but like emotionally, socially, to get ready for college.
Who advised you on that decision?
Coach.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, and I got to travel with a team, which was much needed to sort of understand what that life was like and what it was going to be like as an athlete in that elite level. And so, the pressure then wasn't on me because I wasn't the best one in the gym. I just
when you first
got there.
But then you started to have to fill the shoes of future Olympians.
Then it builds, right? So, my freshman year we won, and I was playing front row, not back row. I was only in 3 rotations, which is like a little bit volleyball lingo, but it was just like thrilling and exciting and all these things. And then sophomore year, you're like, okay, we won last year. But it wasn't so much pressure. It was just like, let's see what we can do. And I always say once you've been there, it gets easier because it's not this pedestal anymore where you're like, oh my gosh, the national championship. Like, how do people make it there? Once you've been there once, you're like, okay, it's doable. We know how many games we have to do, and you can really break it down by part of the season. So then by, I don't know, the third year I was there, it was like, I just say if you can hit like a utopian type of play, we were there. Gestalt, we were there, right? Like as close as we could have gotten to it because we just had the pieces on the court that were incredible. And I'm like so grateful that I got to be a part of that. I think it was like a year and a half or something. We didn't lose a set.
Wow.
And so then the next year we lost all those players. I think there were, obviously we had
your senior year?
My senior year. Yeah. We lost a lot of the players that had gotten us that far and had created that group. And I'm sorry, I'm rambling about this.
No, it's interesting.
We get there then to my senior year and we were like, we can't let this die with us. And that became more of a pressure situation. But I say throughout that my freshman year through my senior year, we always thought we were one of the worst teams in the Big Ten because that's how it felt in the gym. Like, you've got to get better. You've got to get better. We've got to be better all the time. And we had maybe like one lull in there in, that third year where I talk about it was like the great teams. You felt like, okay, maybe we're one of the top teams in the country, but the second top team in the country is on the other side of the net and practice with us every day. So we were just getting better all the time, right? You just like, you're just always improving. And so that pressure was kind of pushed back and forth by the thought that like, we've got to improve. We've got to improve. We've got to get better. We've got to keep it here. We've got, and it just like built and built and built and built and built. And then when we won, I always say when we won my senior year, I think it was a shock to a lot of people because we had lost so many of our key pieces.
Yeah.
But I think to us, we were just so relieved to have won. And we were just like, oh my gosh.
Got it
and
done.
we were just like, yeah. And then it was like, okay, now I can graduate. Now I can move
that's
on.
awesome. Thanks for sharing that story.
So, yeah, and I'm sorry it's long.
No, that's awesome.
But pressure, yeah. And I think now we see pressure. I think of like, is it Dak Prescott? Who his team is getting so much better. Like, he was the one up here, and then his team's getting so much better with him, and now he's kind of faltering a little bit. And I think that happens a lot in sports. There's like a best player, this elite player. And then like the rest of the team starts getting better to meet them. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be it, right? This team's going to be unstoppable. And then that elite player starts to like kind of crumble a little bit.
Yeah,
what's going on? Yeah.
Interesting. How do they handle that?
So anyway, sorry.
No. Well, that, which leads me to my next question, because we took out, you handled all three of the ones I had in between. No, this is great. It makes my job a lot easier. So this is my surprise for Coach Blair, but I'm gonna try to lead her into this.
You're ready.
No, you're ready. This will be fun. So you have these successful elite or high-level performers. You're on your Chunky Soup commercial, right? You've won your national championships.
Let's go.
How do you – I'm not worried about how you sustain success, although that's part of it. First time this ever happens. For instance, you get off the court, you're in a packed gym in State College, there's some dude's video camera in your face, and some guy drops down on his knee, and he doesn't even know who you are, and he asks you if you want to marry him.
That happened.
Wow.
You want to know the funny backstory of that?
I would love to.
Wow.
Okay,
Coach
I
Blair
still to this.
It's on YouTube. I'll send it to you, Coach.
Oh, I got to see.
To this day, I don't know that person. But more backstory. I got to go back just a little bit. My husband played at Penn State, and he was playing in Switzerland at the time. His mom was in the audience that night. Some guy comes up and proposes to me.
Oh my God.
So my mom and my dad and my now mother-in-law are all sitting in, and I'm sure Max's dad was there too. And they're just sitting there like, what's going on? And my mom is like, I have no idea. And I was just like, yeah, I can't, but thanks. I think is what I said.
These are really nice flowers. Please leave me alone, sir.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it was a club coach, and it was one of those nights where the clubs bring all of their athletes, and they all come, and it's like a really fun night because they're so excited to be there. And so the energy in the gym is just really high, and I'm assuming they like coaxed him into doing this, or maybe somebody had to shave their head because he did. I don't know. Something like that, right? Yeah. But the best backstory of that is that my now mother-in-law and father-in-law were in the
It's a witness.
We're witness to it.
Witnessing
and probably like,
proposal.
do we need to call Max?
Wow. That's an awesome story.
Yeah, pretty funny.
Haven't heard anything like that before, Coach.
Yeah, that was a weird one.
I love
Probably
that.
not the weirdest one, but that is a weird one.
Can we share the YouTube on our site?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Sure, we can.
No.
We'll link to it. We'll link to it in the show notes. So if you're looking, I don't know, maybe we'll probably have restrictions on it because
Right?
the guy, we don't own the video. But
Yeah,
we'll,
the poor guy.
We'll link to it in the show notes. So if you guys want to check it out, it'll be. You'll see, the only time Coach Blair has ever been scared of anything in her life.
I was like, do we have security on that? No, I'm just kidding.
That's great.
Very, very harmless and very funny.
That's great. Awesome.
So I think, I had to get that one in because I found that video and I laughed about it for quite a bit. I was like, there's no way we're not getting that in the show. And my question was, how do successful high-level athletes or elite performers, handle success and everything that comes with it? So the everything that comes with it qualifier was something along those lines. Yeah. And I know it's a silly example, but like I remember when me and Callum got ranked my senior year and they threw a party for us like on campus.
Really?
And there were
awesome.
and not nearly to the level that you ever played at, but it was like all of a sudden like my mugshot and Callum's mugshot were like from like
they
action
had, like, the
shots.
heads
It
or
was
something,
all over the place.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you're the first ranked doubles team in program history. It's a small campus.
Right.
Callum was one of my best friends. We spent every waking hour of the day together, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey guys, it wasn't just like, hey, what's up, fellas? Like, what do you guys, what's going on this weekend? Good luck with your match. It's, who's next? When's this happening? And I never felt more, I don't want to say pressure, but it was this odd thing that everybody always knew that we played and we were a good doubles team. It was just all of a sudden we had a number attached to our name or accolades attached to our name.
Right.
I remember that kind of threw us off a little bit. We had a great fall and then we had a not so spectacular spring. And I'm not exactly sure what got to it. We played tough matches, and we were a great doubles team for 3.5 years, but it was, or 2.5 years, excuse me. But it was odd, and I'm wondering, to kick it out, whether it's personal experience or in coaching experience, what do you do? What sort of advice would you have to these types of performers to say, hey, here's how you go about this? Because you don't think you're different, but there is something that changes, right?
You're treated differently, right? Like you might not be different as an athlete. I think we were coached very well in this space. Like I said, Coach did a great job of pushing us to recognize that we weren't there yet. Like we always weren't there yet. And I think that's sort of how he recruited. So all of us, I always said, had the good crazy. Well, mostly good crazy. But just that, underlying, there's something that like cuts into, I don't even know how to express it, like an intensity, I guess, about each player that had that. And when you got into the gym, it was like just sort of everybody was going 100% all in all the time. And if you weren't, it was very evident. And people would tell you, right? People would point that out. And so I think creating like that kind of a culture in the gym is what didn't allow us to like feel it as much, because in the gym, we always felt like we weren't good enough yet. Does that kind of make sense? And so out of the gym, people would be like, oh my gosh, you guys are great. And like, over the last 3 hours in the gym, we just heard like, you're not good enough yet. You're not good enough yet. But with that yet on it.
Sure, qualified.
That's right.
You're working towards it. You are improving, but we're not quite there yet. And so it was like we always had that little bit of extra, like, oh, there's more potential there. Like we could get that. So I don't know if that's
It's a constant reminder
helpful.
of your humility.
Oh, yes. That existed very much in the gym all the time.
It's true, and it's inside that message. And to answer your question, and just for our listeners, too, that's Davidson.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Where you guys
Thanks,
were ranked.
Coach.
That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I think that's how you explained that culture that was built at Penn State is a great message.
Yeah.
Right? Because, yes, not there yet. Kaizen, continuous improvement, humility. I think you both answered the question very well. It's like, hey, it's wonderful to achieve, and you should celebrate every step of the success, but you can always get better,
right?
And that you have a great responsibility to be a great teammate, and I guess at its very core of your character, and I think that this is part of the character of the person.
Yeah.
I think it will be handled differently by all kinds of people. Again, many of the people we're talking about are young people.
That's
right?
what I was just going to say. Like, you talk about teammates and leadership, and, I look back on that time thinking that a leader needed to be a certain type of thing. And I know now that that's like probably not what I should have done, right? And I wish I could go back and change the type of leader I was then.
We all
and
do.
Obviously I can't.
We all do. We went through this last time I was here,
Yeah.
or 2 times ago.
Right.
We all have our regrets about who we were as people, but I think it's
exactly.
not to get too philosophical here, but the whole point of being
is
human
growth.
is growth,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
To learn
So,
from.
yeah, I don't want it to sound like we all, as student athletes, we just we got it and we knew 100% what we were doing, because we absolutely did not. We made, big mistakes and had to come back from them, and with our teammates and with our coaches. And, of course there were days where we got home and we were like, what is coach talking about? Like, that always happened. And so I don't want people to listen to this and think like, oh, like that's the way it should be at every college. Everyone's just like happy in the gym, because there's growth in those moments. And so you kind of have to go through them.
Yeah, it's
and
true.
I hope that makes sense.
No, it does. It makes a lot of sense, and it's very difficult. I would think, to be that elite performer, to have those high expectations, from your family, from significant others, from your teammates, from your sport, and how do you handle that each day? And I think we have to try to, you just got to stay grounded.
Yeah.
Keep working. Absolutely celebrate, your achievements.
Right.
But you can always get better, and there's always someone faster and stronger.
Yeah.
For sure. I've got one more, and I know we're a little bit long right now.
No, it's good. It's good.
I
This is a
think
good conversation.
this is a selfish question, because I'm hoping that you guys will be able to give me some advice. Selfish meaning I'm looking for these answers
For the
myself.
guidance.
I'm looking to smarter people than myself, but
Not in this room, Coach. We're all together.
so one, and Coach Blair, you spoke about this, and Coach Rich, you did as well. Youth. Okay, we've been looking at this from, I assume, at least a college athlete perspective, college coaching perspective, maybe
high-level
high school.
Yeah.
As
Right.
we can get into specialization in a completely other episode, but we're just going to take that athletes are specializing. They're picking one sport earlier and earlier and earlier on in their lives, right?
Makes me sad.
Which is a sad thing.
Yeah.
But it's the reality, and we'll just accept it as a given if that's okay with you guys right now. For those athletes who are specializing young and who are experiencing what I won't just call, or what could be labeled significant success,
Yeah.
right? How do we keep those athletes on the up and up as coaches? And I know that, Coach Rich, you always talk about the first coaches are the parents. And I'm not saying one way or another whether the parents are good or
Whether
bad.
that's good or bad.
We know the parent that I work with in this circumstance is a great parent. He's amazing. I think he does an incredible job with his son. But knowing
how to keep them motivated?
I think it's, how do we keep, whether it's the love of the game, which I know, linked to our previous podcast.
Yeah. We got to have him here more often. He's way better at that than we are.
No, it's good. I did my research for today. But, whether it's love of the game, and I think burnout comes to that. And this is, I know this is an open-ended question, so, feel free to take this where it is. But, I think there's also, injury issues as well.
Yes, overuse.
What is your message to, parents and coaches of young athletes who've had early success to have a sustainable career, whether that's something, and by the way, if that's something that your child wants, please don't force your hopes and dreams on your son or daughter, because they are their own person, qualifier. But, if you have this circumstance, how do we sustain this, or what sort of advice are you giving to coaches and parents who are dealing with successful young athletes?
I'll first wave the caution flag.
Exactly.
These are children.
These are children, right?
We have to discuss the parents, because more than likely they're the most influential people in the young person's life. The dad who erased the logo on his son's skates at age 10 because he wasn't sure who he wanted to sign with at 10 years old. Right? We wave that yellow caution flag. Be real careful. Like, too many times are we reading, and statistics will help us provide evidence of young athlete burnout, right? Age 12, 13, they're quitting the sport.
Right.
Come on, we know it's not because of the sport. We know it's not because of their friends. We know it's not because of the joy they have playing the sport. It's because of influence from adults. There's a real issue here. And, economics comes into play. Because what do you hear? Well, scholarship.
Right.
So pressures, family pressures with dollars and cents. How are we going to pay? Right? It's very real for so many families.
But then other families being priced out and burnt out. And I mean, there's so many pieces, I think, to the youth sport, high level athlete. I think it's maybe a dangerous thing now. We all used to say, oh, you have so much potential, right? And now maybe that's a dangerous term because the second you say that, you may be putting somebody in that box of you have so much potential in this sport. You have to stay in this sport. You have to do this sport. I would be a softball player. I would be a 6'5" softball player, third baseman, if that's what happened.
The hot corner, Coach.
I loved it. Do you know how close third base is in softball? It's very close.
45 feet, is it?
I don't know if my reflexes are that good. So, yeah, I mean, my strike zone's 4 feet, right? So it's like that wasn't maybe my long-term sport. I loved it as a kid. And I'm so glad I played it. And I think I played it up until maybe freshman year of high school. I didn't start playing volleyball until high school. It's just like, I think we do these kids a disservice by putting them in a box and telling them you have so much potential here.
Yeah, you better, take Sundays off. You better let them go play in the snow if they don't, some days you're just not going to feel like doing it.
Yep.
Let the child be a child.
Yeah. And I think identity, right? I mean, it's like your identity was decided for you at 9. Shoot, man, I'm 31. I don't think my identity's I mean, I'm starting to figure out maybe what it is.
Right.
But if you're
telling
me,
and if sports has a part in that, right?
Yeah, and I think that there may be. I mean, look, the young guy that I coach right now, he's top 5 in the country in the 12 and unders, and has been so for the past year. He's gonna have another year in the 12s. He continues to grow. He's growing as a player, and he loves. He loves tennis. He he will eat, sleep, and breathe it. And I'm like, look,
so he's probably looking for more.
He's looking for more.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so not how I look at this game.
Yeah.
I told you in my first, the first time I joined you guys, how I needed to talk about anything but the game while I was playing.
Right.
In the 90 seconds in between the two games, in between changeovers, right?
Yes.
And I've got this young guy who, we're taking a water break, and he's like, all right, so here's the top 5 seeds at the Australian Open, and here's what we need to do. And I love it. I love his enthusiasm. I love coaching him because he shows me that, the uniqueness of athletes. And I think, so much of this is the relationship among player and coach.
Right.
Like you said before, Coach, I mean, it comes from the adults. And I feel like I'm not trying to put this on myself like I am going to be the end all and be all on his career, but I just want to not get in the way.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And I think it's a really intimidating thing. I feel like we talked about a number of times before, if I have an off day, if I don't hit well in practice, so be it. But if I say something stupid, is he going to lose respect for me? And then all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Yeah. I think it's a really hard. I think coaches need to know. Coaches, you need to understand that, these young guys are looking and watching every single one of your moves. I can tell you my 2 favorite coaches, my Little League travel coach when I was between 7 and 11 years old, and my tennis coach growing up between about 10 and 16, in terms of the influence they had on me. And I'm not saying that the coaches I had in college didn't have influenced me. I look them to more as peers or almost as older siblings, honestly. Yeah. Like my assistant coach my freshman year, I feel like he's my older brother. He's the best coach, my favorite coach I've ever actually worked with at a high level. But if I look at who I became as a player, it was because of Mr. Klein and Mr. McGrath.
One as a person, right?
and Ross Wachiku.
Yeah.
Because they set the tone. Mr. Klein was always talking about fire in the belly, but he was the first person to pull out that bucket of double bubble gum and say, boys, we chew this because it's bad for us. And you're going to like it, and you're going to be blowing bubbles at shortstop. That's the love of the game.
Yeah.
Right.
Mr. Klein loved coaching us. Ed McGrath loved coaching us.
Probably why you loved playing for them.
Exactly. And then, Coach Ross he taught us how to work hard at 11 years old. He made us stand at it. He's a Buffalo fireman, and he would make us stand at attention before we even did any warm-ups. And everybody's like, oh, my God, this guy's scary. I'm like, this is wild. We're in the Army. We're about to run 6 suicides. You guys don't think this is cool? Yeah. And then I look at that, and I'm like, how did I get so lucky to have those coaches? And I don't think they were being anything other than themselves. But it wasn't about, all right, Joe, well, you're going to get a college scholarship one day, and I'm going to want all the credit for it. It's, look, boys, we're going to come here, and we're going to teach basic principles. And I may have answered my own question. I apologize.
Well, you know what? Yeah. But you have me thanking all the coaches out there who make these efforts, right? Like you say, and this passion that your coaches had, and they loved coaching, that's right, so critical. And I
think
agree.
of my dad when I hear that. My dad coached Little League for 30-something years. And I think, once every couple months, something comes up on social media, and it'll have somebody at their signing day, and they always still thank my dad. And he's a Little League coach. He does I think it's 9 to 11 is what he coached for all those years. And they still, to this day, however many years ago it was, they'll say, thanks, Coach Brown, for, everything that you did for me to love this game. Yeah. And it's like, how cool is that? That's something wonderful. That sticks with, an athlete forever. So
absolutely. That's exciting. And we're filled with gratitude to all the people who give that time and passion to these young folks. So I think it's great. It's great to share those kind of stories.
Awesome.
I think we should wrap it. I think we got a lot done today. I don't want to. I mean, we could go for another hour.
Part 1, a part 2.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Joe, you did wonderful work. Really appreciate all of what we talked about today, and we look forward to the next one. This is Joe Blair and Rich Jacobs signing off. WNY coaches. Thanks for listening. See you next time.